Today we're stepping into the dark side of the fight game. This isn't about glory, belts, or epic battles. These are stories of UFC fighters who traded the Octagon for a prison cell. I'm talking about guys who had the skills, but instead made choices that hit harder than any punch ever could. These are wasted careers cut short because lives were forever changed. Will there be drama? Yes. Chaos? Absolutely. So buckle up as we count down 5 UFC fighters doing serious jail time. What's good, y'all? It's your boy Luke Too Sick, and we're back in the lab, back with another list video. We're gonna get into it real quick, just hit a like on that video, get it popping in the algorithm. Also subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss the heat that we are bringing. And a big shout out to our new subscribers, y'all. It's an honor to have y'all joining the channel, joining our little community. Here we focus on everything from professional wrestling to boxing to MMA, list videos, biography videos, recaps, all that, you name it. If it's about violence, then we are covering it. We got some fire lined up for you in 2025 and some fire ready to serve up to you right now. This is 5 UFC fighters who, unfortunately, they risked it all and lost it all, including their freedom. It's your boy Luke Too Sick. Keep those hands up. So we begin our list with a guy that I first saw on The Ultimate Fighter, and what happened to him on that season, well, it basically foreshadowed what will happen in the future. I'm talking about Jeremy Jackson. Jackson had a promising career in the early 2000s coming up in California, and he faced a who's who of names in his first 10 fights. He went 6-4, but he faced guys like Joe Stevenson, Shoney Carter, and Jake Shields. He even had a trilogy with Nick Diaz in which he won one of those fights. Then he'd appear on The Ultimate Fighter Season 4. Unfortunately, his stint on the show, well, that was then cut short because he broke house rules because he snuck out to meet a girl. My man wanted a booty call.
You get locked up in this house and you start to focus more on, I can't do this, I can't have that, but it is what it is. Pack your bags, you're going home. All right? Have a good day, guys.
Yeah, I was always told money and women lead to most of the reasons people end up in jail. For Jackson, my man got caught up. Around 2 years after his last fight in the UFC, Jackson found himself arrested and charged with multiple felonies for an incident with his ex-girlfriend. Things like assault, kidnapping, and worse. This case gets really strange because Jackson, he ended up pleading guilty despite the advice from his lawyers. It was actually a real shocker in the courtroom. Even one of the female jury members said she thought he was innocent. Now, I do want to point out that authorities have recordings and surveillance footage implicating Jackson. His lawyer basically explained the situation, saying Jackson was simply broken down by the whole thing. He was then sentenced to 25 years to life. So there you have it. Jackson had all the tools necessary to make himself a good name in the MMA game. Maybe not a star, but a guy who could have had a long career. Now, instead of fights we're remembering, it's just all about his downfall. Now, the next guy on our list, he's a relative unknown to the game, but he did fight in the UFC. It was UFC 4, and it was his one and only fight in the company. His name was Joe Sun, and my man had a weird resume. He fought in the UFC, but that was at a time where you could fudge your resume and make it on a card. He also played a role in Austin Powers, and he also founded his own, quote, fighting style. His career highlight, though, was that lone UFC appearance where he got absolutely obliterated by Keith Hackney. This fight was wild because Hackney landed mad groin shots repeatedly. Honestly, that might have been the universe foreshadowing something because Joe Sun's life was about to take a dark turn. In 2008, Joe Sun's DNA will get linked to a brutal kidnapping and assault that happened on Christmas Eve of 1990. And then it would all be over. The details of this case are stomach-turning, so I'll spare you the nitty-gritty. Just know that Sun and an accomplice, well, he put a person through unspeakable acts, and eventually he'd receive a life sentence. It gets much worse too. While serving time in 2011, Sun even killed his cellmate. That murder got him 27 years on top of the life sentence he was already serving. Yeah, it's a terrible story. I don't know who Joe's son was. I wasn't watching around that time, but it sounds like he was an absolutely terrible person. He also founded his own fighting style though, and he caught a body in jail. So, is that fighting style like real?
Oh, that really hurt. Who throws a shoe? Honestly.
Alright, the next guy on our list, if you're a fan of this channel, well, you probably know his name. It's perhaps the most famous case of a UFC fighter going to jail. I'm talking about Lightning Lee Murray.
Yeah, Lee Murray is one of the most legit gangsters of all time. He really is.
Yeah, Murray was a dude who went from throwing down in the UFC to orchestrating the biggest cash heist in UK history. Yeah, you heard that right. Coming onto the MMA scene in 2000s, Murray made a name for himself, going toe-to-toe with legends like Anderson Silva. He also reportedly knocked out Tito Ortiz in a bar fight. Thank you, Lee Murray. But fighting wasn't his only hustle. In 2006, during a spell of injuries that had him out of competition, Murray hatched a plan. One of the wildest plans in history. Murray and a couple guys would end up pulling off a £53 million robbery. A story that sounds straight out of a Hollywood script. Yeah, it may be illegal, but if true, yo, Lee Murray, you did that. After the heist, Murray fled to Morocco, thinking he could dodge the heat. But the law caught up with him, and in 2010, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. He tried to appeal, but instead of catching a break, his sentence got bumped up to 25 years. As of now, Murray's still behind bars, with a release date set for 2035. Yeah, it's a wild story, but let's be honest. When Lee Murray comes out of jail, my man's gonna be good. Imagine all the Hollywood producers that are gonna be calling his phone, knocking on his door, trying to get rights to that movie about his life. I mean, I could see the title right now. Tap out, cash out, crash out. The Lee Murray story. If that ends up happening, someone's gotta write me a check. Alright, next on our list is a guy whose nickname says it all. I'm talking about War Machine.
Physically, War Machine, he could be a problem for anybody. But I'll tell you, mentally, he's definitely got some issues. It was kind of a piece of work, you know. Man, what a nut.
Yeah, Jonathan Copenhaver first burst onto the scene on The Ultimate Fighter, and my dude had it all. Good looks, personality, and he had a knack to get into absolute battles. War Machine was straight raw energy. Unfortunately, a lot of the times, his head got in his own way. Copenhaver competed in both the UFC and Bellator, and though he wasn't a top guy, he always brought the kind of chaos that got people out of their seats. Just peep his fight against John Rollins. Now, War Machine was never in the top 10 or anything. He wasn't a big name guy, but my man was popular. He was getting sponsorships, so he was getting some money, and he was dating the biggest adult entertainer in the world, Christy Mack. And that's when his life would take a dark turn. In 2014, coming off a loss and the end of his relationship, War Machine hit rock bottom. And I mean hard. He would brutally attack his ex and her friend, with this attack being next level violent. Yeah, and I mean, this is true crime documentary type violent. Christy Mack suffered some serious injuries. She was kidnapped for multiple days. War Machine then fled the country, sparking a nationwide manhunt. Cops later found him in California. In court, it was game over. Attempted murder, kidnapping, you name it, War Machine caught the charge, and he would eventually be given a life sentence. He won't be eligible to walk free until 70 years old. Now that's a lot of time to think about how bad you messed up. The moral of War Machine's story is, it's just not enough to be good in the cage. No, you gotta handle your business outside in life as well. War Machine wasn't a top guy, but he was a guy who was making a good life for himself. Unfortunately, that got all messed up. And that leads us to the final submission on our list. This is a guy that I watched growing up, probably because he's from my area growing up, and he had a pretty good nickname. I'm talking about the New York badass, Phil Baroni. Baroni was a popular figure in MMA during the early 2000s. He was known not only for his explosive striking skills, but my dude was also mad confident. Some call it cocky. Some say a jerk. Baroni fought in all major promotions like the UFC, Pride, Strikeforce, and much, much more. He faced guys like Frank Shamrock, Evan Tanner, Carl Parisian, all the way up until his final fight in 2019. Now, Baroni didn't win a title or anything like that, but he was still successful in his own right. He would end up leveraging his attention that he got in MMA, and he would end up doing a small stint in professional wrestling. But, unfortunately, it would all go downhill. In 2023, Baroni was arrested in Mexico for allegedly murdering his girlfriend in a hotel room. According to reports, he flagged down law enforcement, claiming his girlfriend was unconscious and needed help. When authorities arrived, they discovered her body on the bed, covered in a sheet, with visible bruises on her face and body. Baroni was taken into custody and charged. Baroni is now awaiting trial, and if convicted, well, the dude could face 30 to 50 years in jail. But with that said, I want to take a pause for a second. According to those close to him, Phil Baroni has been grappling with the effects of CTE for years. Now think about this. Back in Baroni's prime, and in the days when fighters like War Machine were slugging it out, fighter pay was a joke. These guys were putting their bodies and their brains on the line. And for what? Pennies? So you have to ask yourself, was it worth it? What I learned from researching this list is that Baroni is far from alone. He's part of a small but tragic fraternity of early UFC fighters whose lives have taken a steep downhill turn after their fighting days were over. It's a grim reminder of the steep price these athletes pay long after the crowd stopped cheering. Alright y'all, that's our video for today. I hope you guys liked it. Make sure you hit a like on the video, get it popping in the algorithm. Comment below, let me know what you guys think. There's some fighters that I didn't touch on and you guys want me to create this into a series. This could be part one of many. Just let me know below. Let's continue the conversation in the comments. Remember to subscribe, hit that notification bell, because we got so much more coming. So many more lists, some reactions, some bios, so much more for 2025. Just make sure you are staying tuned and you are always keeping those hands up.